Okay, so you may be wondering what the Heritage Trust Network is. And I'm actually wondering how I get the slides to progress. Right. Yes, we're a membership body, and we're a body for charities, community organisations, social enterprises that are rescuing, restoring, and reusing and managing historic buildings. We're a UK-wide organisation. We have around 600 members, and about, I think, something like, last time I looked, 54 in Wales, and it's growing. It's doubled in the last couple of years, and we are a network. We're very much about peer-to-peer learning, about our members learning from each other. We have a very small team. There's currently 7 of us around the UK. So we have a Scotland Development Officer and a part-time Northern Ireland Development Officer. We'd really love to get a Wales Development Officer as well, but we're chasing the funding for that. But the point of what we do is to get our members together, get them talking to each other, exchanging their experiences. We always say that if you have a problem, if you're facing an issue, there'll be another member that's faced it before, and we can put you in touch with each other. So obviously, most of what we've been doing over the past couple of years has been online, but we're beginning to do in-person events like this. But there's still a lot of online events, as we've all realised the benefits of that, as well as the disbenefits. So we give advice, we provide training, and we advocate for community-led heritage regeneration. And we're really part of a jigsaw of who looks after the historic environment. So, we recognise we're not the only show in town. Bodies like CADU look after major historic buildings, National Trust and Scotland National Trust for Scotland, the Canal and River Trust, whose remit just creeps into Wales a little bit, own more listed buildings than anybody. Obviously, local authorities look after a lot of the historic environments, as we do as private individuals, because if we own houses, or even if we rent houses, we're looking after a bit of the historic environment, even if it's not that historic. But the private owners that own those sort of big stately homes that are not with things like the National Trust or CADU, they're in a body called Historic Houses. That's their association. And obviously, religious organisations run a lot of manage a lot of historic buildings, but our members are part of that jigsaw, and we're the community, we're the non-profit bit of that jigsaw. So I've already said that's what our members are. So I just wanted to say a few words about town centre regeneration and the role of heritage. And why am I showing you this picture? Well, this picture was a plan. I come from Coventry, and this picture was a plan for my city about 15 years ago. So what they were going to do was demolish the whole of the city centre and rebuild it according to this plan. And this was by the American architect, he's since died, John Jerde. And Jerdes are sort of a global firm who create massive shopping malls and all over the world. And the idea was that the post-war city centre that had been created after the Luftwaffe had levelled it previously wasn't fit for purpose. It wasn't doing its job. And part of the argument for that was saying, in order to attract these retailers that are so important for our city centre, we need the absolute perfect premises that they're looking for. And at that time, it was a sort of double height frontage and a deep floor plate. And so in order to do that, we had to get rid of all these shops that had been created in the 50s and recreate them. And we would then attract all these retail chains. Well, you know now that most of those retail chains have gone bust. So in many ways, I think this plan was sort of overblown when it was first put forward. And between the first and the second iteration of this plan, the global financial crisis had started to happen. So it was never going to happen anyway. But in many ways, in chasing those retail uses, we were chasing unicorns. We were trying to find premises that were perfect for a particular use. And that particular use was going to disappear, as we now know. It hasn't totally disappeared, obviously, but it was going to be something that we can no longer rely on as an engine of regeneration. And yes, and it's these sort of things that they were trying to create. But I think when we look in contrast at the historic environment, and we're thinking about what people are really looking for in the town centres of today, well, if we'd have been here 100 years ago and we'd gone out into the high streets, it would probably be a lot busier than today, but all the people we would have encountered would have been here for the necessities of life. They'd be coming in to shop for essentials. Maybe they'd come in to go to the post office or to pay taxes or to deal with the bureaucracy. You had to walk into town or to deal with the bureaucracy. Now we can do that online. There's a period when we could do it by post or by phone. But today, people, if we want to get people into town centres, they need to come because they're choosing to come. It's not for the necessities of life. They need to come for an experience. And what they're looking for is an authentic experience more than anything. And it's that authenticity that the historic environment offers, that sort of authentic experience of place that people fly off to European capitals to enjoy at the weekend and hang out. And the other thing that I think the historic environment offers is that persistence. Those premises that are adaptable and can change over time. So we're fitting uses to buildings rather than buildings to uses. And in many ways, fitting those uses into the buildings leads to more creativity. The very act of thinking about how we're going to use the space and using spaces in different ways makes people think differently. This is a house in Scotland, which is actually teeming with small businesses, mainly in arts and culture, but there are people there like financial advisors and so on. So it's being used in that very creative way, but it has a whole variety of spaces, and those spaces sort of attract different people. And I think the other aspect of the historic environment offers is that economic aspect, and it was talked about by Jane Jacobs, the famous American urbanist, who talked about the fact that old buildings, the finance to build them has been paid off long ago. So, they can actually be a lot cheaper, a lot more affordable for small businesses. Whereas as soon as you do that sort of comprehensive regeneration, you're looking for a return on investment to pay for it. So you're immediately excluding, and unless you take very special measures to engineer space for smaller businesses, you're immediately excluding certain businesses. And of course, today we have the argument about embodied carbon. That's, and I really think that in planning, we should start with a presumption against demolition, because, you know, if somebody wants to demolish and rebuild, they should show the maths to say, actually, in the long term, this is going to be more environmentally sustainable. And that's quite hard maths to demonstrate. But I'm not excluding that some people could demonstrate it. But all these historic buildings have the embodied carbon in them, and we don't want to destroy that and then have to recreate it. So just to talk, I'm just going to quickly go through some of our members. This is the ridge in Dunbar in Scotland. Dunbar is has an amazing historic high street with these stone buildings in them, and burgage plots going back from the high streets. And the ridge has taken on a number of those from the local authority, and is trading people, usually from sort of quite troubled backgrounds, perhaps drugs or gambling addiction or whatever, training them in traditional heritage skills to restore those buildings, but also in those burgage plots. They've created a number of community gardens behind the buildings. Circus, Welsh example, Circus Eruption in Scotland. In Swansea, they've taken over former church, St John's Church, which is absolutely ideal for an organisation that empowers young people through circus skills, because you've got the high ceilings. Enbar Foundation in the north of Wales, taking over the former Shotton Steelworks, and doing a lot of sort of employment and regeneration activity based on those premises. Here's Historic Coventry Trust. So my home city, they're a larger trust that have taken over 22 historic buildings from the City Council all at once, and tried to restore them all at once in time for City of Culture. They didn't quite make it, but it's good to set yourself an ambitious target. And they've pretty much got there. So yes, I need to say thank you to our funders, and particularly to Cadw, who gave us a little bit of extra money this year to run this event and do some other additional activity in Wales. So thank you. I'm going to unshare and find Liz's presentation, which I should, which if I do, that's the one, isn't it? So Liz, this is from here in Theatr Soar, and it's going to talk about the development of this building and what they're doing with it. Thank you.
Hyfryd I fod yma bore yma, dwi'n mynd I siarad Cymraeg. I'm going to be speaking Welsh, so get those headsets on. Right. Croeso I Canolfan a Theatr Soar I ddechrau gyda. Dyma ble dwi'n byw. Dwi'n byw yn yr adeilad yma, mwyn I lai. A dwi'n mynd I siarad gyda chi am ein datblygiad o ble dyn ni wedi dod, beth ydyn ni'n gwneud nawr, beth ydyn ni wedi cyflawni, a beth ydyn ni'n mynd I fod yn gwneud. Ydych chi'n gallu dweud wrthai pryd mae 5 munud ar ôl? Cos dwi'n gallu siarad am byth. Beth yw, sut wyt ti'n gwneud hwn nawr? Let's have a look. Yay, right. Right, okay, so picture the scene, right? Dyma lle wnaethoch chi dod mewn heddiw. Dyma beth oedd e'n edrych fel yn 2009. Okay? A des I yma yn 1999 i ddechrau gyda, fel gwirfoddolwr. Ar y pryd, nes i dod nôl at siarad Cymraeg ar ôl 17 o flynyddoedd ar ôl gadael addysg Cymraeg. Nes i dod nôl at y Gymraeg ac o'n i eisiau boddi fy hunan yn yr iaith. We need some... Ti eisiau Crisfonau? Johnson? No? You can hear me. So, nes i dod at pwyllgor fan hyn, achos oedd y pwyllgor wedi sefydlu Canolfan Gymraeg. Right? Ar ôl Eisteddfod yr Urdd yn 87, 1987 yn Castell Cyfarthfa, wnaeth y pobl oedd wedi trefnu'r holl gweithgareddau codi arian am yr Eisteddfod yna, wnaethon nhw wedyn sefydlu Canolfan Gymraeg. A nes i dod at nhw, ac oedd siop bach yma, siop oedd yn gwerthu llyfrau Cymraeg y pethau, ac oedd yna criw o bobl yn gweithio'n gwirfoddol i trefnu gweithgareddau Cymraeg yn y gymuned. Ar gyfer plant, pobl ifanc ac oedolion. So des i at nhw a dwedes i, dwi eisiau helpu chi, dwi eisiau gwirfoddoli, achos o'n i'n gweithio, o'n i'n dysgu Cymraeg oedolion ar y pryd hefyd, ac yn gweithio mewn ysgol Gymraeg fel sgrifenyddes ysgol. Ac nes i dod fan hyn a dweud, dwi eisiau helpu chi datblygu'r Gymraeg. Wnaethon ni ysgrifennu ceisiadau mwyn sefydlu Menter Iaith yn Merthyr. A mae Menter Iaith, mae Mentra Iaith yn bodoli o gwmpas Cymru i gyd, a mae'n sefydliadau sydd yn gweithio i hyrwyddo defnydd y Gymraeg yn y gymuned. So dyna beth yw ein nod ni fel sefydliad, yw sicrhau cynnydd yn y nifer o bobl a defnydd o'r Gymraeg yn y gymuned. So, pan des i yma, roedd yr adeilad fel hyn, right? Oedd e'n cwmpo lawr. Oedd yna problemau mawr. Oedd y hen festri'r capel. So mae'r hen festri'r ochr yna, a mae'r capel yr ochr yma. Roedd e'n capel Cymraeg annibynwyr. Ond oedd e ddim yn cael ei defnyddio rhagor. Oedd y gynulleidfa oedd yn cwrdd yn y capel, yn cwrdd yn y festri, ac oedd dim ond 6 ohonyn nhw oedd ar ôl. So anyway, pan nes i meddwl am y siwrne, dyma lle daethwch chi mewn. Os daethwch chi mewn o'r cefn, dyna beth oedd yn edrych fel pan daethwch chi mewn, okay? So beth wnaethon ni, a dyma beth oedd yr ystafell yma yn edrych fel. So mae'n fraint cael sefyll yma yn y ystafell yma fel mae yn nawr gyda chi hefyd. So wnaethon ni edrych ar pa adnoddau oedd gyda ni fel Canolfan Gymraeg, a sut oeddwn ni'n gallu datblygu nhw, oherwydd yn y festri, des i mewn i'r stafell un diwrnod, i gwaith un diwrnod, a roedd un o'r nenfods wedi cwmpo lawr. Right? Oedd rhaid i ni stopo, meithrin yn cwrdd y pethau felly, roedd e'n rili wael. Oedd rhaid i ni ffeindio ffordd o sicrhau dyfodol i'r adeilad. Nes i ar y pryd edrych mewn i adeiladau eraill, nes i hyd yn oed meddwl am fynd i industrial estate a cael unit i datblygu a cynnal gweithgareddau yn hynna. Ond nes i dod ar draws cofnodion hen cyfarfod y capel blynyddoedd yn ôl, a dwedodd rhywun wnaeth dyn sefyll lan yn 1920 neu rhywbeth yn yr ystafell yma a dweud mae rhaid i ni cario ymlaen i siarad Cymraeg lles y plant o fewn y welydd yma. Right? Ac oedd hwnna fel turning point i fi, fel troiad i fi, ac o'n i'n teimlo mae rhaid i ni buddsoddi yn yr adeiladau yma, achos mae'r adeilad yma wedi cadw'r iaith Gymraeg yn fyw ers blynyddoedd, a mae rhaid i ni cario ymlaen i wneud hynny. So dyna beth oedd rhaid i ni wedyn fel pwyllgor edrych ar beth oeddwn ni eisiau wneud gyda'r adeilad. So, wnaethon ni dod lan gyda cynllun, wnaethon ni trafod cynllun, achos ar y pryd roeddwn ni ymgysylltu gyda plant a phobl ifanc trwy'r celfyddydau lot. A wnaethon ni opera rock draw yn y Coliseum yn Aberdâr, ac o'n i wedi ymarfer mewn fan hyn, a dwi'n cofio dod mewn fan hyn yn diwrnod. A rhywun oedd yn gweithio gyda fi yn dweud, bysa hwn yn ffantastig fel theatr, ac o'n i'n meddwl, my God, let's do that. You know, bydewch chi'n ei wneud fel bod rhywle i perfformio i bobl ifanc Merthyr. So anyway, beth oeddwn ni eisiau wneud oedd datblygu Canolfan Zoa a Theatr Soar. So beth oeddwn ni fod eisiau wneud oedd y prosiect yn tair elfen, cadwriaeth adeiladau hanesyddol, datblygiad y celfyddydau ar lles y gymuned, a datblygiad ac ehangiad gwasanaethau iaith Gymraeg a ddwyieithog a darperir o fewn y gymuned. So dyna beth oedd pwrpas y prosiect i gyd. So os ydych chi'n gallu meddwl amdano, mae'r canolfan Gymraeg, so Canolfan, mae'r holl partneriaid Cymraeg sydd yn gwasanaethu'r ardal wedi lleoli yma yng Canolfan Zoa. So mae'r urdd i pobl ifanc, y meithrin i blant bach, mae dysgu Cymraeg i oedolion, a menter iaith sydd y sefydliad ni sydd yn sicrhau defnydd y Gymraeg yn y gymuned. So ni gyd yn y ganolfan. Beth oedd yr adeilad yma yn wneud, sef y theatr, roedd yn caniatáu i ni agor lan i'r gymuned mwy eang, mwyn cael pawb mewn i'r adeilad. A holl ethos y sefydliad yw cynnig cyfleoedd i bobl cwrdd cymdeithasu os ydyn nhw'n siarad Cymraeg neu beidio, a wedyn clywed a gweld y Gymraeg yn fyw ac yn iach. Mae llawer o bobl sydd yn dod i pethau fel yoga, Saesneg yma, yn dechrau dysgu Cymraeg oherwydd mae'r Gymraeg yn dod yn fwy perthnasol iddyn nhw i bywydau nhw. Dyna'r fath o peth yn ei wneud. Dwi'n gweld ni, fel peth sydd yn fy meddwl i, y darlun sydd yn meddwl i, fel bod ni'n rhyw fath o pwerdi, ble mae pobl yn dod mewn yn ddi Gymraeg, yn dysgu Cymraeg ac yn defnyddio'r Gymraeg, yn cwrdd â phobl eraill ac yn creu rhwydweithiau newydd o ffrindiau sydd yn siarad Cymraeg, a wedyn mynd mas i'r gymuned ac yn defnyddio'r iaith. So dyna'r ffordd dwi'n gweld fel Canolfan Gymraeg. Mwyn datblygu'r prosiect, y cam cyntaf oedd, nes i cael gair gyda Adam Hitchens, dwi'n siŵr bod rai ohonych chi'n nabod Adam. Daeth e mewn i roi advice i fi, i roi cyngor i fi ar sut i fynd ati i datblygu'r prosiect i ni beth oeddwn ni eisiau gwneud. A'r cam cyntaf oedd datblygu partneriaid yn y gymuned. Mynd o gwmpas pawb yn y gymuned a sicrhau bod nhw'n cael mewnbwn i beth o'n nhw'n teimlo dylai Zoa bod. So ni'n siarad ar y pryd, roedd y trydydd sector yn Merthyr yn rili byrlymus, yn cryf iawn. Dwi'n ddim mor cryf erbyn hyn, ond roedd e ar y pryd. A wnaethon ni cael llawer iawn o cefnogaeth. A'r holl pwysig, y peth mwyaf pwysig amdano fe oedd, oedd wedi rhoi hyder i ni cario ymlaen gyda'r prosiect achos o'n i'n gwybod bod angen amdano fe. Hefyd, pan agoron ni, roedd e wedi just curo'n syth, it hit the ground running fel petai, achos roedd pobl yn y gymuned yn teimlo perchnogaeth o'r prosiect. So, a dyna, a mae'r perchnogaeth yna wedi tyfu dros y 10 mlynedd diwetha. Wedyn, oedd ges i cyngor bod rhaid i fi cael y cyngor ar ein ochr ni. Doeddwn ni erioed wedi ysgrifennu hyd yn oed business plan cyn wneud hwn, a o'n i ddim yn gwybod pa mor gwleidyddol oedd datblygu cymunedol yn mynd i fod. Faint oedd pobl yn y Senedd yn mynd i fod yn dadlu am beth sy'n digwydd yn Merthyr Tydfil yn y capel bach yma yn Zoar. Oedd e wir oedd rhaid i ni cael llawer o bobl ar ein ochr ni. So yn lleol, oedd rhaid i ni cael cynghorwyr i ymweld â'r lle, i teimlo'r angen dros wneud y gwaith. Dyna beth oedd yn pwysig i ni. A mae rhaid i fi dweud roedd nhw gyd mor cefnogol. Oedd yr arweinydd y cyngor ar y pryd, Jeff Edwards, yn dyn anhygoel. Oedd e'n dyn oedd yn cydio mewn pethau ac yn gweithredu ac yn neud i pethau digwydd. A mae lot fawr o ddiolch gen i i'r dyn yna am sicrhau y cydweithrediad y cyngor. Mae Zoe Thomas ar y rhestr yna fel rhan o adran datblygu economaidd. Mae Zoe yn eistedd draw yna, bydd hi'n siarad gyda chi wedyn. A dwi'n meddwl bod e'n gwir i ddweud, a wnaeth Adam sôn i fi am hwn ar y ffôn pan oedd e'n gofyn i fi siarad heddiw. bod Zoe wedi bod yn rhyw fath o catalydd i dechreuad datblygiad canol y dre y Merthyr. Achos ar y pryd, dwi'n cofio, doedd dim beth oedd cynllun treftadaeth, doedd dim unrhyw fath o strategaeth ar gyfer datblygu yr adeiladau ar y pryd. Ac oedd rhaid i'r cyngor sgrifennu strategaeth yna. Ac o'n i wedi cael mewn i hynny, ac oedd Zoe yn rhan o hynny, mwyn sicrhau bod ni'n gallu, achos wrth gwrs mae rhaid i chi bwydo mewn i, mae rhaid i'r prosiect cyd-fynd gyda strategaeth lleol, mae rhaid iddo fe hefyd mynd gyda strategaeth genedlaethol a polisi hefyd. Ni chi gyd yn gwybod pa mor bwysig yw hynny, bod e gyd yn aligned gyda'r holl pethau yma. So dyna'r pobl lleol, dyna'r cefnogwyr mwy genedlaethol. O'n i wedi gofyn i gweinidogion dod yma, bod yna pob math. Nawr roedd y holl datblygiad yma wedi digwydd dros 5 mlynedd. Roedd e ddim wedi digwydd yn syth. Mae datblygu partneriaethau yn cymryd amser, achos mae rhaid i chi ennill ymddiriedolaeth pobl. Mae rhaid i chi ddim yn gallu cydweithio gyda rhywun os ydych chi ddim yn trysto nhw. Right? So, mae y fath yma o gwaith yn really pwysig. 5 munud, blink and neck. Right, okay, so dyna'r arian cawson ni mewn, right? Oedd na, dwi ddim yn mynd i darllen y gyd mas, ond 1.8 miliwn oedd y cyfanswm. Dyna'r fath o waith dyn ni wedi bod yn neud dros y blynyddoedd, i chi cael gweld. So dyn ni'n datblygu'r gymuned. You have signed out. Right, okay, so dyna'r fath o beth. Ar ôl 5 mlynedd o bodoli, wnaethon ni cynnal gwerthusiad o draw effaith economaidd y diwylliannol y Canolfan, jyst i weld sut oedden ni'n mynd. Achos fel pobl sydd yn bodoli yn ein cymuned, mae rhaid i ni rhoi tystiolaeth o'r angen am ein bodolaeth o hyd ac o hyd i sicrhau bod ni'n cael mwy o arian mewn yn dyfodol. Ar hyn o bryd, i'r dyfodol, ni wedi datblygu Consultation Theatr, ni'n mynd mwy mewn, mae'r theatr yma wedi cael ei rhedeg ar goodwill and fresh air ers 10 mlynedd, right, a gwirfoddolwyr. Ond i'r dyfodol, dwi nawr yn gweithio ar strategaeth i cael arian mewn i weithio i'r celfyddydau. So mae'r Consultation Cymraeg, yr un cyntaf o'r fath yn gweithio gyda'r partneriaethau rhwng y byd celfyddydol a'r byd Cymraeg mwyn datblygu'r Gymraeg. Ni newydd cael Shirley Valentine mewn fan hyn, ac wedi creu fan hyn yn Gymraeg, ac ar hyn o bryd mae'n twrio o gwmpas Cymru, a mae'n cael fantastic reviews a popeth. A mae'r Shirley Valentine sydd yn hwn yn siarad Cymraeg ac yn dod o Merthyr Tydfil. So mae'r holl iaith yn iaith Merthyr, iaith Cymraeg Merthyr. A mae'n bwysig bod pobl ar draws Cymru yn clywed y ffordd dyn ni'n siarad Cymraeg ac yn dathlu hynny. Mae yna Academi Theatr Gerdd wedi cychwyn gyda ni yn Zoar. Maen nhw'n sgrifennu Theatr Gerdd eu hunain, achos does dim modd i ni creu Theatr Gerdd Cymraeg yng Nghymru. Mae rhaid i ni wastad cyfieithu stwff o Lloegr, stwff Saesneg, a mae angen i ni creu ein storiau ein hunain mwyn rhoi llais i'n plant a'n pobl ifanc. A wedyn prosiect yr organ, mae'r organ newydd cael ei wneud. This started, oedd e wedi dechrau gan dyn oedd wedi cerdded mewn i'n diwrnod a dweud bod angerdd gyda fe dros dathlu un o'r organwyr Merthyr, a wnaethon ni datblygu'r prosiect oedd yn £320,000 prosiect. Dyn ni'n mynd i, mae'r organ newydd cael ei adnewyddu, a nawr dyn ni'n mynd i cyflogi swyddog treftadaeth i rhedeg cynllun o gweithgareddau celfyddydol a threftadol dros y 2 flynedd nesaf. So dyna'r prosiect nesaf. Dwi ddim yn mynd i siarad am hwnna. A prosiect really pwysig, Merthyr Tydfil Cultural Network, achos dyn ni'n gweld, right? Ti ddim yn gallu darllen hwnna. Dyn ni'n gweld pa mor bwysig yw rhwydweithiau yn Merthyr. Os ydyn ni'n cydweithio gyda pobl, ydyn ni'n gallu gwneud gwahaniaeth. Ar ein pen ein hunain, dim un ohonyn ni'n gallu gwneud gwahaniaeth. Y popeth dyn ni'n gwneud yn digwydd trwy partneriaeth. So dyn ni ar fin cychwyn wythnos nesaf rhwydwaith newydd. Our objectives yw hwnna. So, this is interesting. Achos oedd y ti'n sôn am rhwydweithiau, a mae rhwydweithiau fel dweud yn hollol canolog i datblygiad cymunedol. Heb rhwydweithiau, does dim datblygiad. A beth ni'n trio wneud, build trust to enable new collaborative working, better understand the needs of our community. Achos mae holl datblygiad cymunedol, mae ei gyd am datblygiad bywydau gwell i'n cymuned ni. A hefyd i roi llais i'n cymuned. Llais yn lleol a llais genedlaethol. Bwydo mewn i rhwydweithio mwy. So dyna beth dyn ni'n wneud ar hyn o bryd. A dyna fe, a mae hwn yn quote gan rywun oedd wedi bwydo mewn i un o'r ymgynghoriadau, 5 ymgynghoriad oedd wedi cael ei wneud pan oeddwn ni'n datblygu'r prosiect yma. A dwi wastad yn edrych nôl ar rhai o'r ymgynghoriadau i feddwl am os ydyn ni wedi cyflawni beth oeddwn ni wedi setlo mas i gyflawni. A dwi'n teimlo bod ni wedi. Dyn ni dal yn cyflawni, ond dyn ni dal yn gwrando ar ein cymuned. Dyna'r peth pwysig. Dyna fe. Diolch yn fawr.
Fantastic. It's so good to see the work that's been done here. And I also say all of our members are different. And when people regenerate using historic building, it's always different. But then you can see so many things that are the same in different places. And you used the word catalyst. And that's often what our member organisations are doing. It's that key historic building in a place that acts as the catalyst for further regeneration, both of the historic fabric and the place more generally. So thank you very much. So that really quite neatly brings us on to Zoe Thomas from Merthyr Council, who is going to talk to us about the regeneration of Merthyr just as soon as I've sorted out sharing the right slide, which is this one. Go on. Yes.
Yeah.
All yours.
Thank you
Zoe.
very much. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, a fantastic presentation from Liz as always, and yeah, you know, it just really shows the opportunities for, you know, that the regeneration of key buildings in Merthyr can bring to the town centre. So what we're going to provide an overview on today from the council perspective is the opportunities for physical regeneration aligned to our new master plan. So that's the Merthyr Tydfil Strategic Valley Hub 2019 to 2035. So the next 15 years of physical regeneration opportunities within Merthyr Town Centre. Okay, so just a bit of an overview on the strategic context. This is our third iteration of master plan now. So back 10 years ago, we looked at opportunities for public realm developments within the town centre. Following on from that, our previous master plan looked at infrastructure within the town centre, which we believed, you know, really transformed the image of the town. So that was with our projects such as the River Tap Central Link, the creation of our event spaces, the redevelopment of the Red House, and again, the regeneration of a number of historic buildings, which has now allowed us to move on to our new master plan, which has a key focus on integrated transport solutions through bus and rail, but of course still considering that public realm and building redevelopment as well. So in terms of this new master plan, our key partners were Welsh Government, Transport for Wales, McDonald's, the Urbanists and Alder King. So we had a lot of support and buy-in for the creation of this master plan in order for us to have perhaps a different focus to what we've had previously. The master plan was fully adopted in 2020. We've held consultation with our key stakeholders on the master plan, and now we move into that implementation phase. I don't know what's happened on this slide, where the words have gone. But it's just an overview really of what we delivered within the previous programme. So again, I mentioned the creation of our event space. This is down on Llys Rowlands. Here then, the redevelopment of the Red House, and of course our new event space on Penderyn Square. So again, linked to the existing master plan, we secured £25 million to regenerate the town centre. That was primarily through European funding through the Convergence programme. Welsh Government heads the Valley funding and other external finance, such as through HLF, etc. And as I said, we managed to restore then a number of key buildings. That's what's happening. Sorry, I can realise now. I need to press it twice. Yeah, the River Taff Central Link was one of our key projects within the existing master plan. So that was just to improve road access into the town centre, to boost visitor numbers, increase business prosperity, to allow people access into the town centre much more quickly and efficiently. And of course, added priority bus lanes in readiness for the redevelopment and relocation of the bus station. So another programme that we delivered as well was the Portmolus Heritage Quarter. So our phase one was delivered between 2012 and 2016. So the purpose of this programme, funded through HLF, was to enhance and promote the Portmolus Heritage Quarter by regenerating the buildings. So hopefully within your tour today, you'll be able to visit that area and see the significant impact that this programme has had on the regeneration of Portmolus. So we invested 3.7 million and managed to conserve and restore 10 buildings. I'll come to talk about later how we've got our phase two of the programme, again, which is having a further impact within that area. So in terms of the current master plan, the infrastructure development, so I've talked about the bus station. So we've created a new bus interchange at the bottom of town on the Swan Street site. The facility opened in May 2021. Hopefully you've all had the opportunity to go and visit our fabulous new bus station. So we've got new tenants within the building, so Bradley's and Milk and Sugar, and also Stagecoach are our key tenant in terms of the bus service, and we're hoping to secure a tenancy with South Wales Police in the short term as well. And I'm not sure if you've seen within the press recently, but it's won a number of awards, so you know, a fantastic facility for us here in Merthyr. In terms of the master plan itself, the master plan identifies 2 signature sites for redevelopment moving forward. So that's the Gleeblan site. So the Gleeblan site is the existing bus station site and the train station site. So in terms of Gleeblan, we're currently looking at opportunities for that area, which will include landscaping, street trading for our short to medium term solution. And we have started to look at some early engagement on what local businesses, members of the public would want to see on that site. So we're now reviewing that information and hope to continue this consultation now through 2022. For those of you who are aware of the site, as you'll see, there is hoarding erected on the site at the moment, and we've started to demolish the existing buildings on that site, which will prepare us for our redevelopment moving forward. The other signature site then, as I mentioned, is the train station. So it's our aspiration to have that connectivity between bus and rail. So as I said in a previous slide, our main focus of this new master plan is a integrated transport solution for Merthyr Tydfil. So that will allow that further connectivity. We've just started a consultation on opportunities for that site at the bottom of town, and we'll hope to have further consultation moving through this year. Okay, I'm just going to go through some of the key buildings that we've identified for redevelopment through this third iteration of our master plan. So the General Hospital, a key building on the gateway into the town centre. So the building has now been purchased by a private owner in 2020. So we are now looking to work with them to look at opportunities for future redevelopment with a view to applying into Welsh Government Transforming Towns programme. And we're currently looking at solutions of what that site will potentially become. Current discussions are around housing opportunities. The Theatr Royal, so a grade 2 listed building at the very top of Portmorlas. So again, we're looking to work with the owner at what the opportunities are for the redevelopment of this building. There has been, the Welsh Government have recently funded some survey work on the site. So we've looked at structural survey options, appraisal to understand when that building could become in future, because we need to ensure if we are regenerating these buildings that we've got a long-term sustainable use for them, and that we aren't just creating, white elephants within the town centre. So that's key for us moving forward now, is to work with the owner as to what the future opportunities are. YMCA, again, it's going to be very important for the regeneration of Portmorlas. So it's located right at the very top of Portmorlas. Our aspiration is to redevelop the building into 10 office spaces, and we've secured funding through National Lottery Heritage Fund, Building for the Future programme, which is the European programme being delivered through Welsh Government, and Welsh Government Transforming Towns, including significant finance from the local authority as well. So we've appointed our architects and contractors, and work is due to start on site shortly. I'm sure you all recently seen in the press a lot of information in terms of emergency works we undertook on the YMCA. I can confirm this morning that the building is not at a point of collapse, contrary to some of the messages that were issued on 2 weeks ago. But yeah, we had to just undertake some urgent emergency works, which have now been completed, and we look to start the redevelopment fairly shortly. St Thomas Hospital site, again, a long-term vacant site within the town centre, which was very important for us to redevelop. Excuse me. So we're working with the owner of the site to create 70 homes. That's both a mix of market and social, and MTHA are the identified RSL to take that forward with the private owner. So we're currently working through the funding model, and the first element of work to be undertaken is the remediation works on site, which will be our first major milestone to lead on to the actual implementation of the houses. The Synagogue, again, another grade 2 listed building, which has been vacant for a long period of time. It's been identified within previous master plans for redevelopment. But in 2019, it was purchased by the Foundation for Jewish Heritage. So they secured funding to undertake some urgent repair works on the site and created a business plan, and are now working to secure a funding package from both HLF and Welsh Government in order to start the development works in relation to this building. So hopefully some, real opportunity for this building moving forward. The aspiration is to create a museum for Jewish heritage on the site, and naturally we'll make the linkages then with Liz, with Cyfarthfa Castle. So, a real opportunity for stakeholder engagement as part of this scheme. Housefields, so there's recently been some comms issued on this scheme, and again with a new tour today, you'll hopefully see some of the building works happening at this site at the bottom of town. So they're looking to create a boutique hotel, 23 self-contained flats with a bistro bar, and they're currently on site with a planned completion for September 2022. They're currently looking at tenancy for the building, so hopefully moving forward we can start to share some further information, but a real exciting opportunity for the town centre. Marsh House, so we're currently exploring options for the redevelopment of this property, working with our colleagues in the strategic housing team. It has a significant opportunity for redevelopment, and again, we'll be hoping to issue some further comms on this within the next month or so as to what this development can become. Again, you would have recently seen within the press that Merthyr Council have now acquired St Tydfil Shopping Centre. So the acquisition was completed in December 2021. So the shopping centre team are now directly managed by the local authority. And what we're looking to do now, where our master plan was adopted in 2020, obviously there have been significant changes since that point, even in relation to the pandemic. We've now purchased the shopping centre. So we're looking to have a review of our master plan so we can consider all of the sites holistically in order to identify a way forward. But there will be real significant opportunities with in relation to the shopping centre. So again, as we start to understand the next steps, we'll share that with stakeholders accordingly. Merthyr Tydfil Leisure Centre, so we're looking to secure funding from Welsh Government for the redevelopment of the swimming pool and the potential relocation of the skate park. So again, I know there's been some communication from Merthyr Council recently, but once the funding has been secured, we'll be able to share some further detail around the programme and the timeline for the reopening of the swimming pool. The TH programme phase 2, as I mentioned earlier, we secured this funding from HLF to continue the enhancement and promotion of the Portmorlan's Heritage Quarter. That programme has been extended slightly, so it was due to be completed December last year, but now it's rolled to December this year. We've currently completed 3 buildings with a view to complete a further 4 this calendar year. So in terms of community engagement, what we are trying to ensure is that there's detailed consultation and engagement on all projects. So, we have key partnerships such as our town centre partnership where we'll share this information. We've started doing a lot of targeted consultation online and within the town centre. So we're ensuring that we've got the full coverage with all businesses, that we have a presence on site in town, whether that's in the bus station or in the shopping centre, to be able to engage with town centre users. And if there's any information that anybody ever wants at any time, I'm happy for you to email myself and my team to get an update on any of the projects that are currently in development, or that, any buildings that you'd like further information on. Also, within the HLF programmes, there is a requirement to deliver activity programmes as well, which really allows that community engagement. and an opportunity to engage, with schools and the youth groups, etc. So as part of those programs that we deliver for the YMCA, for the TH programme, we're looking at community engagement opportunities, participation and training, and we look to build those into some of our other schemes moving forward. We also look to work with the third sector to develop and deliver projects in relation to physical regeneration and enterprise. So not only are we looking to work with the private sector, if the third sector want to engage and look at any project development, we've got the full coverage of all sectors. So in terms of next steps, we look to continue the delivery of current approved projects and continue to prepare a pipeline of future projects. So there's a lot included within this presentation today in terms of current delivery and what we aspire to deliver over the coming years, but hopefully there'll be lots that we continue to add to that, and our pipeline will continue to grow, and we'll continue to secure all of that funding to regenerate Merthyr Tydfil Town Centre. There is also a significant enterprise programme being delivered as well, which we haven't necessarily covered within this today because I would potentially be talking all morning. So again, if you want any further information on that, please feel free to contact me, and we can talk about some of the other opportunities in relation to enterprise development. So next steps for us: submitting applications for Synagogue, Marsh House and General Hospital, continue consultation on all projects, and we've also commissioned a company now to support us with the creation of a town centre comms strategy, because we're really conscious of the fact that we want to be able to publicise all of this really positive work that's being delivered within the town centre. Hopefully you've seen an increase in the comms around town centre projects over the past few months, and this strategy will allow us to continue with that over the coming months and years. Also, over the next few months, we'll start to really focus on the development of our signature sites, the Cleveland site and the train station site. So again, there'll be lots of more detailed consultation, particularly with town centre users and businesses, to update on what the future plans are for those sites then. Also important for us is to ensure that connectivity with other master plans that are being or that have been developed. So the Cyfarthfa plan and the Hoover Strategic Regeneration Area Master Plan, as they both have natural links to the town centre master plan. I appreciate I put on here questions, but I also appreciate seeing the agenda that there are 2 further presentations before the Q&A. I do have to unfortunately leave this morning, so won't be available during the Q&A session, but I have left my contact details with colleagues to be able to share with you. So if there's any further information you want after today, please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to have a further meeting or share any further information as required then. Okay.
Thank you very much. So good to see so much of Merthyr's regeneration being focused on its historic assets, and the Jewish Heritage Foundation are one of our members, and Michael came to our conference in Coventry in November and got a lot out of that from meeting the other members. He would have been here today, but he's gone down with the Rona as well. So another victim. So we're now, I should have said before that we haven't scheduled a break. So if you fancy a cuppa, do just go and help yourself during the meeting. We're going to take you to Great Yarmouth now, by the magic of Zoom. And Darren Barker from Great Yarmouth Preservation Trust should be on here to talk about their work. I can see Darren there. And yes, Darren, you're going to share your own screen. We're just going to turn the camera around so that so that Darren can see you. Okay, it's all yours, Darren. Okay, I'll just let everybody settle down. We're ready to go.
Okay. Okay. Ready?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, I'll make a start then. Sorry about that. But thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm from Great Yarmouth Preservation Trust, which was established in 1979 and has delivered some fairly notable projects such as a Time and Tide Museum. But in recent years, we've really accelerated our activity, and I'm going to give you an overview in the next 20 minutes or so. These are the issues that we faced, or more accurately, this should be called the starting point. So we had deteriorating buildings, high levels of unemployment, social and economic issues, shortage of quality housing, disengaged community, and a rapidly changing town centre, which isn't just in Great Yarmouth, of course, but is everywhere across the country. Our major challenge for the Preservation Trust has been deteriorating built environment and high levels of vacancy and neglect. And that has been compounded by socio-economic issues, which has contributed to the erosion of the built environment and low end values, limited investment, lack of maintenance, and high levels of unemployment and limited opportunities, especially for young people. And the buildings themselves have been neglected, and this has been compounded by an acute skill shortage and lack of understanding. So you can see the brickwork on the slide is not only the wrong sort of mortar, of course, but it looks like it's been put on with a catapult. So it's an example of the lack of skills that we had. But within the town, there is a remarkable community spirit and a wonderful sense of place and a real pride in the town. These are volunteers who just walk up and down one of the streets in Yarmouth, not constantly, of course. They walk up and down the streets in Great Yarmouth just collecting litter, recycling materials, and all that sort of stuff. And on top of that, we've got an amazing, nationally important historic built environment and townscape. It's often regarded as a seaside town, but Great Yarmouth is actually a medieval town, and the seaside development came later. So in 2012, the Preservation Trust took a deliberately strategic approach to the challenges, and since then we've been working towards these aims, which are repairs to the built environment, training engagements, employment creation, housing, and building organisational resilience and sustainability within the trust. This is number 133 King Street, and we concentrated our efforts on King Street, which is kind of like the high street in Great Yarmouth. So this is 133 King Street. It's boarded up vacant for 15 years. Now, working with the Borough Council, we created a model where the council provides us with loans which are secured against the asset. So the loans are over 20 years. And they are only provided to us because we show the Borough Council that we have a strategy for funding, for repair, and most importantly for a viable, sustainable end use, which then generates income to service the loan. In this case, in this particular building, we converted it to an art gallery, an artist studios in an attached warehouse at the rear. And this provides the income to service the loan and to keep the building maintained. Importantly, a professional gallery and artist studios really supports the wider regeneration in the area. So this is a before picture. The condition was really poor. I mean, vacant, neglected for 20 years. Lots and lots of decay mechanisms that you'd associate with water ingress. The finished artist studio is very modest, rely on minimal intervention. And this is the gallery on the ground floor. And the regeneration benefits of a gallery are really important. and space is used both by professional artists but also community groups. So the income generated from that is enough to keep the building going and to service the loan. And it supports and fosters the emerging cultural nature of the area and provides a focus for that sort of activity, and above all, is a viable and sustainable reuse, which was shaped around the business planning that we started before we took on the building. And using exactly the same model of borrowing money from the local authority, we purchased number 135 King Street, and on the face of it, it doesn't look too bad. It looks in reasonably good condition. But it was the worst. I've been doing this for 30 years, and this is the worst building in terms of condition I've ever been into. This is a before and after. It was, somebody mentioned the point of collapse earlier on, and this one genuinely was at the point of collapse. The jewelry shop was just operating in a tiny bit of the ground floor. The rest of it was in a terrible condition. There's a tremendous demand for housing in Great Yarmouth, and most existing privately owned rental units are in poor quality. So as part of the project, we created 4 residential units, and this helps to meet some of the demand for quality housing. And the revenue that generates is ring fenced to maintain the building and also to pay back the loan that we've taken out on it. And this is the rear of the building where we developed the residential units, and you can see that the very careful and sensitive repairs that we undertook, which helped to form in these are two bedroom units. Now the Preservation Trust now has a growing portfolio of residential units within the town, which we've created from previously vacant and neglected listed buildings, and these are managed by us. So it's part of our role to manage the residential units. So we act as our own letting agents. And this is the front of the building, we now have our offices in here, and we operate from King Street. Next, and using exactly the same loan method again, we purchased number 33 King Street. These are all listed buildings, by the way, and all of them were on the Buildings at Risk register. This was last used as an American style diner, and it was vacant and deteriorated, and we undertook full and comprehensive repair. In this case, we converted it to offices for the Sue Lambert Trust, who support victims of domestic violence. And on the right-hand side, a 3-bedroom residential unit. And this is the opening. So the loan model from the council, it works from the council's perspective because it effectively repairs the built environment. It creates accommodation, supports businesses, improves the townscape, and it reduces their risk, of course. But it does require a dynamic and active preservation trust to take this sort of model forward. Still in King Street, this is number 160, and behind this facade is a complete jetted medieval timber frame building. And this one had again been vacant, neglected for this one's nearly 22 years, and we acquired this one through a repairs notice and compulsory purchase order, working closely with the local authority. Detailed survey, of course, to make sure we understand the asset entirely, and completed earlier this year. And we had the Minister for Heritage, Caroline Dinage, come and cut the ribbon on it. It's a residential unit above, and at the ground floor is a Jamaican restaurant. So we had, with this particular building, we had funding from the Architectural Heritage Fund. We managed to secure £350,000 from them, 50,000 from the lottery, and we came in on time and slightly under budget, actually. It's quite good. Moving on. Great Yarmouth has got, nobody knows it, well, nobody, but few people only realise that Great Yarmouth has got this amazing medieval town wall. It's 1.2 miles long, and on it are 11 towers. Now, the towers hadn't been used and were vacant, and so the Preservation Trust, through an agreement with the local authority, worked up an asset transfer. So the towers were transferred to the Preservation Trust. And in 2016, we undertook repairs to this one. This is a southeast tower, for conversion to holiday lets. So it's a viable and sustainable end use, and it's proved to be incredibly popular. It generates money, which keeps the tower and a section of the town wall next to it maintained and conserved. And the use supports the emerging cultural tourism offer of the town. I mean, we've basically pinched the idea from the Landmark Trust, but it's a really good use for these, I mean, fairly challenging buildings. And as a scheduled ancient monument, it is very, very minimal intervention. So this is the next one that we're about to start. This is the Northwest Tower. And again, it's going to be converted to holiday accommodation. And we have funding from the Towns deal and from the Architectural Heritage Fund to convert this one and restore it. And then the next one that we're doing is Pinnacle Tower. This is on the at-risk register, Historic England's at-risk register, and is in a pretty awful state. We've undertaken emergency repairs, and we're developing a scheme at the moment for full comprehensive repair and reuse, again, holiday accommodation. Training and addressing the skill shortages is absolutely key to our work, and every one of these projects has directly focused on training and engagement. So training is now central to everything that we do, and it is delivered across the broad spectrum, from thatching to surveying buildings, from working with blacksmiths and metalwork to working with unfired earth constructions. And this is 40-acre cemetery in Great Yarmouth, and was the beginning of our focus on training and engagement. So large parts of it were overgrown, vandalised, prone to antisocial behaviour, and it was really a wasted asset for the town. So our project was very simple. We started working with trainees and volunteers from across the community, and especially hard to reach groups. Trainees cleared the site, surveyed the monuments, undertook comprehensive repairs, and all under the guidance of experts. The process and the way of working increased skills, employability, built pride, increased our understanding of the cemetery, and we provided intensive training to 20 people, and these were also helped with numeracy and literacy skills, and were from very hard to reach groups, and people in their 40s who've never worked, people recovering from addictions. So the cemeteries is now a beautiful community asset, and it's maintained now by Friends of the Cemeteries group, so it has that legacy. In terms of outcomes, I know I haven't got a lot of time, so I'm trying to whiz through this as quickly as I can. 4,000 monuments surveyed and recorded, 20 acres cleared, 105 restored. The important bit is 10,000 training hours delivered, 280 volunteers, and the amount of pride and commitment that was shown was remarkable. Using that model of community training and engagement, and using the heritage assets as a vehicle to deliver that, we took on a ruined church just outside of the urban area of Great Yarmouth in Hopton. Again, trainees and volunteers undertook the entire project from survey right through to practical completion, working again with a team of experts who provided guidance and skills. Huge range of skills were developed, but also those sort of soft skills like team working and arriving there on time, and all that kind of stuff. We had a community archaeological dig, which was really good fun and extended our knowledge of the church. And after 12 months, fully consolidated heritage asset, which is now open to the community and visitors to enjoy. Kind of similar set of outcomes, 8,000 training hours, 200 volunteers, and the asset conserved. Now, because of the impact of this work and its success, it enabled us to establish a social enterprise company solely owned by the Preservation Trust, which employs people that have trained on our projects. And up until COVID, we were employing 7 people. We're now down to 4, but that will recover. And it's that kind of virtuous circle, taking long-term unemployed people, training them, giving them meaningful opportunities, and then providing them with employment afterwards. The team primarily work repairing and consolidating the medieval town wall. And I mean, it's a really good example of the skills that they've developed and how they've grown. This is an arrow slit in one of the walls. But we don't work in isolation, and it's crucial that we work with a range of partners and collaborate broadly within our community, but also in the wider community and across Europe. We've got a very diverse, rich community in Great Yarmouth, particularly Portuguese, Eastern Europeans. We work to share knowledge. This is a building in Carpaccio in Bulgaria, which we purchased, and we take young people from Great Yarmouth and from across the UK, actually. We take them to Bulgaria, where they work side by side with Bulgarians, learning skills, experiencing new cultures, and getting skills which are transferable. And the benefits are multi-layered: shared cultures, established friendships, break down borders, increased employability, changing perceptions. Lots and lots of benefits, of course. Now, bringing all of these strands together, this is our latest project. This is St. John's, which we purchased a few years ago from the Church of England for £1, but it's not quite the bargain it sounds, because it needs at least £1 million worth of work done to it. What we're going to do is use this one as that training, as a vehicle for training, upscale the work that we're doing. So, a huge 2-year training project, doing all of the work, all of the masonry, the flint work, the roofing, all the joinery on the inside. And then it's going to be used for holiday accommodation. But in this case, we're going to fill it with yurts. So it's going to be an indoor camping. It's right on the seafront, so it'll be really lovely. Pulling all this together, we've decreased the reliance on grants because we generate income ourselves. We work in partnership and collaboration across a wide front and develop business plans to ensure viable solutions to buildings. In the next 12 months, we are going to repair and convert this building to a heritage centre, which is really well positioned in Great Yarmouth, and it's going to be the sort of starting point for the culture and heritage experience of the town. We've recently converted this building into an art gallery, which has proven to be incredibly successful as a regional attraction. So it's drawing people from Norwich, Cambridge, Ipswich into the town. So that's really good, but also provides a free gallery for local people. And it's right next to a really large housing estate. And we're doing lots and lots of outreach work with the kids from this estate. Hemsby Barn, which we own. This is dendro dated to 1270 something or other. We don't really know what we're going to do with this yet, but we did plant an orchard. But we'll work something out. We always do. We're currently working on this one. This is part of the HAS. It's now shrouded in a scaffolding, and it's going to be a place for cultural organisations to have workshops, and also going to have a recording studio in there. We're about to start restoring this Art Deco pub, and continue to work with people, which is really important, because it's the people that make all of these projects work and make them so special. And so I hope I kept within time, and I hope you could all hear me, but thank you.
That was fantastic, Darren. Thank you very much. It just shows an example of an ambitious trust, long-established, long-term relationship with the local authority, achieving so much beyond simply restoring historic buildings, which is a good thing to do. It's they're doing so much more by doing that. Thank you very much, Darren. We're now going to go to Scotland. I keep hearing about Mid-Steeple Quarter in Dumfries. Yeah, everybody says, what a great example it is, but I haven't heard about it yet. So this is my first opportunity as well. So we're going to hand over to Scott, who can hopefully share his slides. And are you good, Scott?
Hi there, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's perfect, straight in.
And can you see my presentation?
Yeah, so
Wonderful.
Scott Mackay from Mid-Steeple Quarter in Dumfries.
Great, thanks very much for the introduction. So I'm based in Scotland. I'm a consultant town planner and executive director of Mid-Steeple Quarter in Dumfries in southwest Scotland. Mid-Steeple Quarter is more than a project really, and it's actually a community benefit society, and its aims are to breathe new life into Dumfries town centre by redeveloping empty high street properties to create a new neighbourhood with a mix of uses built on the principles of local prosperity and well-being. The former Royal Borough of Dumfries has for centuries been the principal market town for the rural region of southwest Scotland. But despite its previous wealth and economic prosperity, in recent years it's become a market town with no market, a bit like a coal town with no mine. This is Dumfries High Street in 2012, and many of the buildings are underused or in poor condition, many are abandoned, and the community is demoralised about the state of their town centre. Like many towns of similar size, in the 80s and 90s, Dumfries was judged to have a big enough catchment to justify establishing national chain stores. So property investors bought up the high street and rented to national chains, pricing out independent local shops and other businesses like hotels and bars. So the high street became a monoculture of retail. And planning policy exacerbated this with a priority for class 1 retail and the high street, making it very difficult for units to get change of use. National chains were only interested in enlarging the footprint on the ground floor. And so the ground floors were extended and businesses were not interested in the diversity of people living upstairs, and flats were emptied out and upper floor spaces just became either for storage or were abandoned entirely, resulting in a depopulated high street. Upper floors in this image are all empty. And the combination of these factors means that come 5 p.m, it becomes a ghost town. The Scottish Government's community empowerment and land reform legislation was at the heart of the idea of Mid-Steeple Quarter. Using initiatives like community asset transfers and community right to buy, we hope to bring 8 high street properties into community ownership and develop them as a community for the benefit of the community. And previously this legislation had been used predominantly in the Highlands for buying back land from shooting estates or islands, and were then stewarded by the community. And Dumfries was the first community to cry that they wanted to buy back their high street. So many community engagement events and meetings took place from 2016, initiated by the Community Council and the Stove Network, a development trust run by local artists. And it's been important to always have a way for more people to contribute and keep the conversation expanding. But as you can imagine, pretty much everyone had their own, in the town, had their own idea of what the magic bullet was for solving the town centre's problems, whether it was to bring a Primark store or a bowling alley. But the process of public engagement and collective working, themes of consensus did start to emerge. People wanted a mixed and diverse high street, not 100% retail, but rather a mix of services, leisure, enterprise, and learning. People wanted a localised economy that would retain prosperity and opportunities within the community. But one big feature was that people wanted people to live in the town centre again, growing a sense of community, of ownership and responsibility, a nighttime economy, and a demand for more diverse shops for everyday needs, such as bakers and greengrocers. Public engagement was key to building capacity to take the idea forward. Many projects were initiated, including organising groups of volunteers to take part in street cleans and repainting closes and shop fronts. And these calls to action brought more people into the project and also stakeholders into the conversation about the future of the high street. Around this time, we got our first significant support from the local council. Enlightened officials at the housing department put forward an idea called the Town Centre Living Fund, which used receipts from council tax from second homes to create a £1 million a year fund to support projects which encourage people to live in the town centre. A bid into the fund resulted in an award of £100,000 to put together the necessary justification for a community asset transfer for the first target building of those 8 identified, and to set up, constitute and launch a community organisation to run the project, plus to continue the community engagement projects. And so following in-depth research, a community benefit society was decided on as the preferred organisational structure. This was because we believed it allowed us to offer community shares and support the principle of collective ownership afforded. The benefit society seems to be the right ethical fit for the project. The Mid-Steeple Quarter Community Benefit Society was launched in April 2018 with a public event in the town centre. Local politicians spoke from a soapbox about the importance of the town centre, and we had fire eaters and musicians. And on that first day, 150 people signed up. Our current membership is now 600. Mid-Steeple Quarter is run by a board of volunteers and is annually elected by that membership. The board employ a small project team to run the project day to day. Members pay an initial £1 as a share in the project and receive a share certificate showing their part ownership of the project. Sharing these on social media has been a very successful way of widening our membership and awareness of the project. The focus fell on a stretch of Dumfries High Street located in the centre adjacent to the historic Mid-Steeple toll booth building. The area is wholly within Dumfries Conservation Area, and the majority of the properties are also listed buildings. We considered this to be the heart of the town centre. It was also the location of the concentration of the most vacant shop units and empty upper floors. Here, almost all the properties on the high street have been empty or disused for some time, some for over 15 years. And many have significantly decayed as a result of neglect by absentee owners. And this urban block was what became defined as the Mid-Steeple Quarter. A national architecture competition for what would become Mid-Steeple Quarter was exhibited in Dumfries and in Glasgow, assisted by the Stove Network and the Glasgow Institute of Architects. The exercise started to frame the potential impacts of the project in terms of that were economic, health and well-being, and environmental, and to develop a group of key stakeholders nationally and locally who would support the idea. The vision was distilled into an approach to develop a core area at the heart of the centre of the town, an area where empty buildings were concentrated, but also strategically positioned for the town, being connected to the riverside, traditionally the main entrance point to the high street. The idea was that by focusing on and developing that core area, the influence would have a knock-on effect further into the town centre. We honed our vision for the high street and produced a vision document called A Blueprint for the Heart of Dumfries. This glossy document expressed the mission in a way that enabled us to better communicate it to the world, especially to stakeholders, partners and grant funders. And you can download this document from the resources page on our website. To summarise it, Mid-Steeple Quarter vision is to see the local community take control of a group of underused and neglected high street buildings and refurbish and redevelop these as a contemporary living, working, socialising, learning and enterprising quarter to underpin a more diverse town centre and act as a catalyst for a thriving and resilient future. The current economics of the town centre present a unique opportunity to gather prominent high street properties into community ownership and position the community to drive a more localised economic model, reversing the outflow of financial capital. And this will enhance the town's performance at a local, regional and national level. In partnership with a local architecture practice, a master plan was prepared and submitted to the council, which was approved in November 2019 as supplementary planning policy, underpinned by a new planning policy in the local development plan for Dumfries and Galloway. The master plan was founded on 3 key principles: the local community taking the lead on redevelopment, repopulating the town centre by creating high quality but affordable housing on upper floors, the dynamic, engaging street level activities supporting a mixed and vibrant local economy. The completed regeneration may provide 60 homes on upper floors and around 50 units for other uses, mainly on ground floor. Again, this master plan can be downloaded from our website. The master plan includes a phasing plan showing phase 1, which was called the former Baker's Oven. Phase 2 is site assembly through purchase and meanwhile use of other high street frontages. Phase 3 is redevelopment of these high street frontages and backland. And then phases 4 and 5 are working with the owners of these properties, but not necessarily considering acquisition. And this is phase 1. Plans for phase 1 of the project are an advanced stage of design and planning. Phase 1 comprises the redevelopment of 135 High Street, which faces onto Queensbury Square and is formerly occupied by a bakery shop, hence its name. The building was owned by Dumfries and Galloway Council, and Mid-Steeple Quarter took ownership of it through a community asset transfer, which was agreed in November 2018. The upper floors are essentially derelict, but the ground floor of the building was used by Mid-Steeple Quarter as a pop-up shop, exhibition and event space. The idea being that we could test the capacity of the community groups to make use of the space that would assist in formulating our ideas for its future. Having successfully prototyped and tested the community use of the ground floor space, the community began to realise that this building and the land to the rear had great potential. So plans were drawn up for its redevelopment. The redevelopment included the building, its entire plot, and a former studio building to the rear. The existing High Street building is to be retained, with a 7-storey extension to the rear, activating Standard Close, an alleyway which links the High Street to Irish Street to the rear. We aim to achieve change and build a track record as soon as possible. Therefore, phase 1 is important in order to prove our concept for the rest of the Mid-Steeple Quarter vision to take place. The proposals provide for a range of flexible business, cultural and community spaces on the ground and first floor, and 7 affordable flats to rent on upper floors. Feasibility work has taken us the development proposals through architectural design, community engagement, business planning, detailed design and construction tender in discussion with the council and other public agencies. And a detailed planning permission was granted in August 2020 and construction contract went out to tender in late 2021. The funding has just been fully secured and construction will start next month with completion mid-2023. Dumfries has a history of stone carving because being located close to significant sandstone quarry at Lockerbriggs. And the site itself has a history of printing. So bringing these two things together, the community were engaged via the local Dumfries Historic Buildings Trust, and we organised a programme of stone carving workshops and artwork in the form of typeface letters were created, which are going to be incorporated into one elevation of the new building. In parallel with phase 1, phase 2 is already well underway with the acquisition of additional buildings. Earlier last year, we identified and approached all the owners of buildings on the High Street of Mid-Steeple Quarter, and a mixed picture of potential acquisitions emerged. And to date, we've been in negotiation with the owners of 5 more buildings where they have indicated that they might sell. We gave the empty properties priority for acquisition, as by bringing them back into active use, we would have the greatest impact on the High Street. Without tenants and therefore leases in place, they were also less expensive. During this period, we've also been in discussions with funders, including Scottish Land Fund, Architectural Heritage Fund and South of Scotland Enterprise Agency. And we finalised the purchases of 2 buildings in September 2020. Following a successful crowdfunding campaign, we were able to purchase 2 more in March 2021. With the exception of phase 1 building, which was acquired through the asset transfer from the local council, all the other acquisitions have been acquired through negotiation and private sale at or below market value, with the threat of community right to buy in the background. We are progressing community right to buy on another building where the owner is holding out for a price higher than independent market valuation. That building is empty, but has a lease in place for another 5 years to run, with the owner happy to let it sit empty and take the rent before selling at the end of that lease. We're currently making best use of the 4 buildings that we acquired, with limited funds. Initial repairs and remedial work to make the buildings watertight and usable for meanwhile uses is taking place. This is number 113 and 117 High Street, which we, in order to make the buildings more identifiable to the community, we had a poll of our membership and renamed the 2 properties the Smithy and the Press, both names evoking the previous use of these properties. We use these spaces for pop-up uses for days or a week at a time with the community, and there's a strong list of local community groups and non-governmental organisations who book these spaces throughout the year. These include uses for new enterprises, exhibitions and community consultation purposes. Another example is number 111, a very attractive and locally admired building which has lain empty for over 10 years. Extensive repairs to the roof, rainwater goods and internal fabric have been required in order to bring it back into use. The building was originally the print works for the Courier and Herald and a local newspaper, and it's 425 square metres over 3 floors, with a retail shop and storage on the ground floor, office and storage place on the first floor, and a large former printing warehouse space on the second floor. Working in partnership with a number of local enterprises, the building is now fully occupied. The ground and first floor is occupied by a new retail concept called Flourish, run by the Guild, a local community interest company and collective of local producers and makers. And the space isn't just a shop, it's also a dedicated workshop space, flexible meetings and event space, and offices for short-term let have been created on the first floor. The second floor is occupied by Lolly at the Loft, a local photographic artist and photography studio and gallery, specialising in high-quality food and product photography. The taking forward of the Mid-Steeple Quarter vision would not be possible without ongoing support and collaboration with our stakeholders and partners who provide expertise, capacity, and of course, funding. Through our experience, we are now influencing legislation and policy at a national and local level. Mid-Steeple Quarter has matured, having moved from a campaign group with a mission to becoming and emerging as a community property development organisation. Although we now have a dedicated and growing project team, Mid-Steeple Quarter is and always has been driven by the power of its members and volunteers. And the pioneering spirit that's in the local community has made us remain determined, and it's kept a spirit of protest and passion for positive change to keep us going. Engagement and communications are very important to the success of Mid-Steeple Quarter, and we have an extensive ongoing community engagement, social media and communications programme. And you can visit our website and download many resources and case studies and follow our journey on social media channels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. That was fantastic. And I think another great example of a non-profit social enterprise model achieving so much for a town, so much to regenerate the historic core of the town. Okay, we have some time for Q&A now. If we can ask the panel members to Darren, are you there? If you can make yourself visible, that's fantastic. I'll change, see if I can get this on a more sensible view, down view. Yes, that's good. Okay. Any questions for Darren or Scott or for this? Yes.
Yes, I'm Rob Thompson, Tittle Heritage Trust. This is not so much a question, it's something I'm afraid that is rather neglected and talk about several and that is how important it is to have a Ms. Mclean who is not only a dynamo but also is someone who people inherit and very difficult to say no to. So my question is to the others, you yourself, David Coventry, to Darren and Scott. Do you have your Ms. Mclean who really you are so important to bringing people together?
Okay, I'm going to have to do the simultaneous translation thing here because I don't think Darren and Scott could hear that because the microphone. The question was, I think, about leadership. That the important thing about Theatr Soar was having a Liz Mclean, and I suspect that we're looking at the Liz Mcleans of Great Yarmouth and Dumfries here, but how, perhaps you just reflect on that balance between sort of, you know, the need for leadership, the need for a key person driving something, and that sort of wider engagement and wider group of people. And are there any, you know, I can see that perhaps there might be some dangers in relying on the sort of key entrepreneurial driver within a project. Who would like to pick up on that? Scott or Darren? Go on, Scott.
Yeah, that is a very difficult balance, because you need to have leadership. You need to have strong leadership. You need to have consistent leadership, who have the expertise and the contacts as well. But the danger in is that it's driven by personalities and not by the community. So the balance that we found is really our membership, and their electing of a board to provide governance, and that board really has that position of leadership and is the conduit really between the community and the project, and by that board sort of essentially policing themselves and making sure that it's a collective decision-making process, and it's not left to one or two individuals to take up all the time or make all the decisions. That's really how we've been able to keep it democratic and reflect the views of the community, with that constant community engagement happening all the time as well.
Any thoughts on that one, Darren?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a balance, and it's about a collective decision-making process. I suppose, sort of, because lots of our projects are really used as vehicles to engage with and train people, the projects spin into other things. So we sort of act as facilitators in a sense. For example, some of the projects, the cemeteries project, for example, that actually span into lots of other projects that the participants took on. So it's providing those opportunities for people to initially to get engaged and to get involved with the projects, but then to take ownership. And that, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, giving a sense of ownership, but it really is important. You know, so we are a very flat system within the Preservation Trust, and providing that opportunity for people to take on the ownership and to be able to articulate how they feel about heritage. I mean, not especially always in words, but to be involved with that process. But yeah, it's about sort of collective decision making.
Yes, would you like to say anything about that?
Project and getting together. I think that
It might be helpful, yes.
when it's getting the project together, I think that determination and, you know, radicalism, you know, was what made it happen. And I think, yeah, you know, you see me as the there are people that come here that have no idea who I am. And you know what I mean? It's all about, and I quickly realized that what funders were looking for was a robust committee and evidence that we were taking on board what the community was saying. It is a bit of a problem sometimes, because people recognize you as the person who's done it, but at the same time, especially over the last few years, I've been really trying to make sure that I'm next to be with the grant funding. You know, yeah, to make sure that it has real community ownership, because we are only here for a short time. You know, the building's going to carry on for the day, it's not a waste.
Okay. So thank you, Liz. And I think and if I reflect on what's happened in Coventry as well, where the establishment of the Historic Coventry Trust was driven by actually a local property developer in Harrowby, who has done on a commercial basis some very good developments around the city, but unlike some developers, recognises conservation deficits and realises when there's a project that he can't take on himself and it needs that charitable vehicle to do it. So he's the chair of Historic Coventry Trust. But in order for it to actually go forward, it needed to get to a position where it's recruited a very strong and experienced executive director. So he's the chair of the board. But and I think that's what I'm picking up from these contributions, that yes, you often need that sort of individual, that entrepreneurial driver at the beginning. But I think we probably know projects that we haven't presented here as good examples, because they're not good examples, where that person has just carried on and not brought in other professionals and other community members to support them, and it hasn't worked in the long term. Any other questions? Yes. Sorry, I'll see if I can pick this up on the microphone, but it might not.
Owen Collins, really, really fantastic presentation. There's some fact, isn't there, with how we need to develop this consultation, partnership coordinator, business plan, master plan, different sites. Then, it's the first step, consultation, all stories, things that aren't so good, big plans like that. Where would you suggest that those who start?
Okay, I'm getting a message that people aren't hearing that, so I'm going to have to repeat it. So the questions about the different stages we have to go through in delivering projects of delivering a town centre regeneration led by the community, and the first one being that community consultation, community engagement. And the question was about, where do you begin with that? What's the best ways of going about it? Who would like to start? Liz?
And I tell you what, was really important is getting in touch with the local CDC and finding out about what local partnerships there are, and if any partnerships can help you engage with the people of the community. That's how to get into hard to reach communities. This is how you reach with people with disabilities. Local people in general, somebody else doesn't know. All about network communities. But what's really, really vital in any project is development funding. And that is from there. And somebody who puts your hand and points you to in the direction of other people who've done similar projects. I mean, all of those with water chapels and finding networks.
Okay, I'm not sure that was totally picked up there. I think Liz was talking about understanding what's already on the ground in terms of community infrastructure, other organisations, networks and partnerships, and also the importance of development funding. And at this point, I should give another plug for the Architectural Heritage Fund. They're strong partners of ours. Adam is there in name, but not in face. He's suffering from Rona as well, so couldn't be with us today. But often it's the Architectural Heritage Fund who are that providers of that early stage finance for development, for feasibility studies, for options appraisals, before we start to think about going to the National Lottery Heritage Fund and other people. Scott or Darren, any thoughts on early stage community engagement, how to get people involved? If you're starting off, I know that's a long way back for you, but if you're starting off as a new project in the community. Who's going to go first? Darren, go on, I'll pick on you.
I think I heard most of that, but it's how you start off the initial process of engaging with the community. Is that right? if is that social media, obviously very important, but in a small town like Great Yarmouth, word of mouth. We worked with other partners like the Job Centre, for example, so we could promote and advertise, publicise what we were doing. There's a local radio station in King Street as well, so we work with them. But really, from our point of view, it's built up a momentum over the last 10 years. And so people are kind of aware now of what we're doing and the opportunities, and having our office and our presence on King Street has also helped, because we can just pop in. So I don't know if I really understood what the question was, but I did say something.
No, that's really good, Darren. Any thoughts on this, Scott?
I suppose I would agree with everything that Darren's just said, but from Mid-Steeple Quarter's perspective, there was an additional sort of dynamic to that, which was the Stove Network, which was it's a development trust run by local artists, and they were really key in getting it off the ground with a program of what they call creative engagement. So it was essentially artistic projects physically in the high street, which engaged with the community and started to get a conversation going about for example, one of the projects was called whose house is this? And so the first building that we took ownership of, before we took ownership of that, the council allowed us to use it. And so we did an exhibition where we'd ask that question: whose house is this? Whose building is this? Who does this belong to? To raise this question about why are all these buildings in the high street laying empty, and who's responsible for them? And that's where it's discovered, that they're owned by pension funds or offshore property investment portfolios, and not the people of the town. And so that was one of the key things to get that conversation going, and people interested in, well, maybe we could do something about this. This is the heart of our town. How can we get involved? And so I think there's a number of different layers to how you engage with the community, how you get it off the ground, and there's different ways of doing it depending on your local circumstances. But in Dumfries, that was how we did it.
I think these days we live in a world of sort of fragmented communities, don't we? When I first came to Coventry, which was 32 years ago, the local paper, the Evening Telegraph, sold 90,000 copies a day in a city that was just under 300,000 at that time. So, virtually every household got the same newspaper. And that's gone now. It barely exists. I look at it online as an app. And we're all, because of that, we need to go down so many routes: the social media routes, the word of mouth route, the networking routes, the local radio routes. But I think we have a great advantage particularly if our buildings are in a prominent position, is the buildings themselves. And the fact that if you're doing stuff to a historic building, people will walk past and people will see what's going on. The first trust that I was involved in restored 6 medieval cottages in a suburb of Coventry, sort of quite a disadvantaged area. And we started to begin with, as volunteers, just clearing out the rubbish from these cottages. And the number of people that go by and start talking to us. And one thing that I've learned from that, and learned from talking to all our members, is although some of us are history geeks, and we love to think about how things were in medieval times or Victorian times, it's sort of living memory that people engage with. And people coming by and saying, oh, I used to buy fish here, or my friend used to squat up there, or whatever, would just be a wonderful way of engaging. And Scott talked about sort of arts engagement. One of the projects we did very early on from there, after the restoration had taken place, was we've got a guy who was called himself an action weaver. and he came over from Berlin. So the cottages, one of them has been restored as the Weaver's house. So that's the one that's we've taken back to its sort of medieval. The rest is a sort of mixed use development of offices and homes and so on. But we got this action Weaver, and what his practice was, he would go into the middle of the estate and start building a loo. And he would give out these hand looms to people so they could do this little bit of weaving itself. And it's, you know, it's quite a challenging estate. But perhaps, weirdly, because he was a foreigner with a strange German accent, we've never seen anything like him before. They weren't hostile to him. They sort of engaged with this weirdness. And just having an artist doing something like that and going out into the place, you know, it's something in this age of social media that we sometimes forget, just going to the middle of a public space and doing stuff to engage people. And yes, there was a good early example of that in Scott's presentation, isn't there? How are we doing? Oh, got time for one more question if anybody has one? Go on, Liz.
See you ask.
Okay, so I'll repeat that for Scott and Darren's benefit. Liz says they really need a building preservation trust in Merthyr. It's really, how do you begin? How do you get people together in the first place? I don't know if you can remember that far down. Scott and Darren.
I would suggest that you start with a building. I think that if you could gather your efforts around one building as a sort of starting point or one particular project, and then you know you've got to look at governance, of course. You've got to look at articles and memorandums. You set up how you you know how you're organised. But I think you need a focal point, and I think that if you could find just one project, one building to start with, and then you know build on that. That will be my advice.
Any thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That's how we started one building, and then it grew from there. And get help from. I'm not sure what the situation in England is, but there's lots of advice, free advice from groups like in Scotland. We have the Community Land Scotland and the Development Trusts Association. They can give free advice to setting up organizations, how to constitute yourself, and also of sometimes funding as well to get things off the ground.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Thank you, Scott. I mean, I think if I could tell the story of the trusts I've been involved in, I think the Swan End Trust, the smaller one that I was talking about, it was just a couple of local people who saw the potential of those buildings, which if you looked at them at the time, you wouldn't recognise that they were medieval cottages that had this amazing history. They just looked a mess. And so just a couple of people meeting and then drawing in the other. So I got drawn in as somebody who knew a bit about business planning and fundraising and so on. And other people got drawn in who were more the historical fabric experts. So yes, it was just two people meeting week after week in the park and then drawing other people in. What am I doing? But Historic Coventry Trust, the bigger trust in the city, I like to think that started from an event that I put on, which was a symposium on new uses for old buildings. And At that meeting, we drew in examples, as we've done today, we drew in examples from other places. In that case, it was Norwich and Gloucester. We drew in people, and we invited people from the council and so on. And we invited Ian, who became the chair, along. And he got inspired, particularly initially by the idea of Charterhouse, our Carthusian priory in Coventry. But for that meeting, we identified not one building, we actually identified 5. We just said, these are the big 5 in Coventry that need sorting out. And in some ways, we've seen some of that list today in Zoe's presentation, and there are plans, but there's probably some others in there that need that. But focusing and saying that these are the big 5, and one of those was the Charterhouse, which Ian, because his family had come from that neighbourhood, he fired his imagination. But then at a certain point, he had conversations with the council that said, actually, what we're doing at Charterhouse, we could do for the whole city. And he charmed them into handing over 22 buildings. But yes, so I think it starts from that. I think having that focus and bringing a few key people together. I think one of the things with the Coventry Trust is that Ian particularly invited key sort of influential individuals onto the trust. Sometimes there's a difficulty is those people who are involved in campaigning the most aren't necessarily the people who can take a project forward. And you know, we've got to recognise that and use people appropriately for where their strengths are. So, of course. Sorry, I think I should just let Darren and Scott go. We're just having a country, sorry, what's your name? Claire from the Wales Co-op Centre is just offering to help here in Merthyr, which is fantastic. And I know we're one of the leading organisations supporting social enterprise in Wales, and we've run events with them before. But I feel like Darren and Scott can't hear what's being said, and it's nearly lunchtime, so we should say thank you to them and let them get on with their day and let them have their lunch as well. So if we could just say thank you to Darren and Scott, and I think we inspired people today, judging by the questions that we're getting now, and we'll pick it up from here. So thank you very much, Darren, and thank you, Scott.